Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to what should be on every CMO's wish list for 2022, presented by Intelligent Demand and Gartner. My name is Mike Swaney, and I am Vice President of Growth Consulting at Intelligent Demand. And it's my job today to kind of get us teed up. And I can't tell you how excited I am for today's presentation. We've got a couple of amazing thought leaders kind of ready to share their thinking around how to be strategic about your revenue growth goals for 2022 and some of the things that senior revenue leaders like you should consider. In fact, some of the key topics for today that we're going to dive into include how to leverage your growth goals to drive the right go-to-market strategy. We'll be diving into how to update and evolve your SDR, BDR function. And we're going to work out some kinks in turning your B2B brand into a growth driver. I am certainly excited to hear from Craig and John today. And I think we're all in for a real treat. Today's conversation is going to feel like and really kind of be a rapid fire round robin because we have so much great stuff to share. But I know that if we work together and we move really fast, we'll get through each and every topic and leave some time for discussion. Before we introduce our speakers today, I want to share just a bit of housekeeping. As you know, this is a live webinar, so feel free to engage in the chat windows with questions and comments and other thoughts along the way. We'll be keeping a close eye on that, Chris and Marshmallows. So if something does come up that you want to get into the conversation, please let us know. We'll do our best to address your thoughts in real time. And lastly, the session is being recorded. We'll make this available on demand shortly after the conclusion of today's event, and you'll be able to view it or share it with others who I think will definitely find it of value. So as a reminder, get those questions and thoughts into the chat box at any time, and we'll be sure to address as many of them as we can. So with that as our setup, I'd like to hand the mic over to our speakers and allow them to introduce themselves, and we'll get started.
Thanks, Mike. Craig, why don't you introduce yourself first, and then I'll go second.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Hi, Craig Rosenberg here. I'm a distinguished vice president at Gartner, formerly of Topo. I do have to mention this, that Gartner is not presenting this. I am presenting on behalf of Gartner. Very important. Legal notice. I'm so excited to be here. But back to the fun stuff. So excited to be here today. It's rapid fire, but there's so much stuff. Like the deck is worth $1 million just looking at what we have in there. So I'm really excited to talk through it, guys.
That's awesome. Craig, thanks for being here. You and I, when we were planning this session, we said, hey, let's make this be rapid fire. Let's see if we can put 15 pounds of advice into a 10-pound bag. And let's really talk to the audience as if everyone on this call, everyone who's going to see it later is like, imagine we are, it's called a fireside chat. I think of us at a bar talking to people who are senior executives, so CMOs, CROs, and the VPs who report to them, right? And I want us to really kind of let it rip. This is not about being formal. This is about being informal and talking to folks like they're our good friends, right? And what would we do if we were in their shoes? Which I know you're down for that. Me too. For those of you who don't know me, John Common, CEO, founder, Intelligent Demand. I'm a longtime revenue growth geek. And Craig and I were talking about it, and over the last 15 to 20 years together, he and I have probably seen and or worked with, I don't know, probably close to 1,000 growth teams across use cases, across industries, across maturity levels, across go-to-market strategies. And so the advice that we've put together today that we're going to be kind of dishing out is literally what I just said. It's Craig and me saying, if I was a CMO in 2022 or a CRO in 2022, what are some of the key things I would want to be thinking of? So last thing I want to say about you, Craig, I'm just kind of bragging about you, is you are a guy who has the head of a researcher analyst, but you also have the heart of a practitioner. I love that about you. And I think I like to think of myself as the reverse. I've got the head of a practitioner, but the heart of an analyst. So I don't know, man. You ready to dive in?
What a combo. Well, thank you for that compliment. Yeah, let's go. I mean, this is I guess what we say, wait, hold on. You've invented a new content type, which is a fireside bar chat. So it's a bar that has a fire and then we're chatting in it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And CMOs are invited to the bar. It's like this secret bar that's only got CMOs, CROs, and that's our unbelievable. I love it.
Exactly. It's the nerdiest bar in the world. All right, here's the first thing. Now I'm gonna take the first three topics, okay? And the reason is because they go together. If I say something smart, jump in. If I say something stupid, jump in, Craig. But they go together, and basically, I want to tee it up. These first three points, the lack of these being clear across the growth team, the lack of these, and I've seen it over and over again, when these are not in place, especially at the front end of the year, I've seen growth teams, they're never going to make it. They're never going to hit their goals. So the first piece of advice is use your growth goals for 2022 to drive the right go-to-market strategy, right? So what's your revenue growth goal? It could be ARR, it could be revenue, what doesn't matter. Break that goal down, as this slide is suggesting, into acquisition, retention, expansion. So if your goal for 2022 is, okay, guys, hey team, we're going to 100, break it down into acquisition, retention, and expansion, and make sure that everybody on the team, the entire growth team, marketing, sales, product, CS, understands those goals. You'd be shocked how many company growth teams, they don't even really know that. They don't know their total growth goal, and they don't know how much has to come from new logos versus retaining the base versus expanding the base. So that's the first piece. Now, once you have that, the next piece connects it to your go-to-market strategy. Okay, acquisition, retention, expansion. Ask yourself how much of each of those buckets has to come from the largest strategic accounts. How much has to come from clusters of important large accounts, call it, and then how many come from more transactional volume and velocity kind of tier 3 accounts. That is how you start to connect growth goals to go-to-market strategy. And it should, when you do this within marketing, and better yet, across marketing, sales, CX, and product, I found that it spawns lots of really important questions, such as, do we have the right positioning? Do we have the customer references, the case studies? Do we have the right product offerings to hit our revenue growth goal? Again, it seems obvious, but it's shocking how many companies go to market into the new year and they're like, what's your real strategy? And they're like, we're going to try really hard. These first several slides are saying trying really hard is not a strategy, right? You can break it down. Okay, so that's the first piece. Now, that leads into the next piece, which is if you know what your total growth goal is, and you know how much is going to come from new logos, retention of existing, and cross-sell, upsell to existing, and you further have a sense of how much of each of those have to come from the biggest, the mediums, and the smalls, now you can start to connect it to the second point. And we call it at ID, we think of it as integrated demand recipes. Integrated meaning it's not just marketing, it's marketing, SDR, sales, CS as appropriate. And demand recipes meaning how are we going to hit the number, the pipeline number, the ARR number, the closed won deals number in each of those 9 boxes. Now, I want you to look at this box and you look at it and you go, if you're trying to acquire incredibly large, strategically important accounts, do you think you should be using a one-to-many demand gen approach, or should you be using something that probably looks more like a one-to-one account-based approach? And obviously, you can see the answer in the slide here. Another mistake I see is that companies going into the new year, they're using the same demand recipe stretched across all 9 boxes and hoping it works out. Your biggest accounts deserve white glove treatment. They deserve more investment. They need something that probably looks like account-based and deep levels of personalization, targeting, cross-functional alignment. Okay, so now I'm almost done. Point number 2, use a grid like this to identify the correct demand recipes, okay? And then the next piece is, okay, demand recipes are at the top. On the far left, one-to-one account-based for your most important prospects and customers, one-to-few for your most important clusters of segments or target account lists, one to many. This is not a volume and velocity of play. And then one to TAM, which really is kind of brand awareness, brand preference. This slide is the last piece, and they all fit together, is now that you started with revenue growth goals, broke it out, connected it to go-to-market, connected it to these demand recipes, use your demand recipes to ask yourself, do we have our cross-functional alignment, orchestration, coordination game where it needs to be? Does marketing, sales, SDR, do they know what to do in each demand recipe? Now, I know this is a lot, but the last piece I would say is you don't have to be, the most amazing on earth in all of these demand recipes. But just thinking about it on the front end as you go into 2022 is going to tell you, where do we have strengths? Where do we have gaps? And connect your activities and go-to-market land to the thing that your CEO cares about, which is we got to hit the number every quarter, quarter over quarter. Craig, how'd I do? What do you think?
I was like, I had all this pressure. I'm like, I've got to jump in and say something. And that was so good. You did say, but there is something important, which is, I have a slide in here about revenue ops, and everyone's asked about it. It's like, guys, like the most important concept is that we think about the world end to end. Right. And we stop. Like it's so funny. Your first thing, it's like, someone on this call might say, well, that's obvious. And the answer is it's not. Like everyone needs to share the goals. Right. And so as you were progressing, I was thinking about it in the end-to-end way, which is like, well, this is a customer acquisition strategy that should be everyone in the organization, in particular the customer-facing revenue organization, should be aligned to and care about. So we built this thing from a demand perspective, but really this is an exercise that we all need to go to from an end-to-end perspective. And we all need to be aligned to it. Because, in my opinion, one of the things I'm not sure you would agree with this, but I throw this out there that in many ways, as marketing has become more evolved in terms of different demand gen strategies, they can come to the table with some version of what you're showing. It's actually making sure that sales agrees and making sure that, the other folks agree and they're prepared for what, and you said it, like what it's going to take. Because one of the things you brought up is like, do we have look, and if you're in a one-to-one, the type of sales rep has to be different.
That's right.
The type of how you man the sales team has to be different. How you handle them from a CS perspective has to be different. So there's just a lot here, but it's important to be thinking about it not as isolated in the CMO's office. This was a true end-to-end revenue point of view that you presented here, and I thought it was awesome.
Thanks.
Last thing. Wait, hold on, John. Smart. One to TAM. You dog. That was the greatest thing I've ever heard. Honestly, like that, we should just end this on that. That was that good.
Okay, so last little bit on this is if you're a CMO or if you're a CRO, I want each of you to call the other before January and share these slides and say, hey, we are brothers and sisters in revenue growth. Let's get on the same page. And my last piece of advice on these first 3 points is don't wait until you're missing your plan at the end of H1 of 2022 to think through this stuff. You can literally do this in a 1-hour conversation between the CMO and the CRO and identify the big pillars that you need to figure out. And you can do that in the first couple of weeks of January. I promise. Okay, enough of that. Onward to your point. Take it away, Craig.
All right. Well, look, guys, one of the things you need to know about me and the new me is I'm spending a lot of time with sales. I'm in the sales practice. And the second thing you need to know about me is that doesn't mean that, working a lot with sales leaders actually means I'm working a lot with revenue leaders and looking at everything across the board. But I bring it up only because it's very interesting. And the stats, I do feel like marketing is not hyper automated. Many of them are hyper automated, but extreme. Like these stacks are literally very mature. The next level of maturity in the revenue stack is in sales. Mm-hmm. And so I presented this data, but I want to throw everyone some data points here. It's crazy what's happening in sales tech. So 82.6% of CROs believe tech is important to achieving sales targets. That is a huge evolution of sales leaders because they got tech, but look, I didn't capture this data before, but I think we know these folks. Like 5 years ago, it would be about people, and tech would be interesting, but it wouldn't be something that they would tie back to winning necessarily. 84% are likely to evaluate new sales tech next year. I actually think the real question is, what are the other 16% doing? Sales budgets will be up 5%. Marketing, in marketing, the number one budget expense is MarTech. I mean, we are reinforcing automation here, okay? And so that is like, we are seeing the hyper automation of revenue. For many of you who have made lots of investments over time, I know this is not a surprise, right? But like, you know, this idea of digital transformation, it's like we're seeing widespread proliferation, different types of, not just mid-market tech, like everyone is hyper automating. So one thing we tried to do is start to look at the world in terms of a revenue tech stack. And we came up with some, in my opinion, it's a simplification of big buckets, which I like, which was, we said, look, engagement, how we talk to the customer and the channels that support it sit at the top. There's this whole new level, layer of applications that sort of start from marketing automation to the account-based platforms, to the sales engagement platforms, you know, it's SFA, all the way through to the customer success platforms that actually, you know, manage the majority of these engagement processes, and also take in from the second layer, the second big layer, which is engagement and operations. One thing I'll mention is, enablement and operations. Geez, I'm so excited, I can't stop. So enablement, hotter than heck, right? Like, I think, I don't have this data point, but I can tell you right now, most sales leaders, know they need to enable and knew that it was broken. And so now that, the tail has wagged the dog a bit, like we brought tech in and now that's changed the way we enable, and it's a good thing. Everything great is happening in enablement, and it's like amazing, and tech is one of the key drivers there. Operationally, we think of it in terms of there's classic sales operations. That's like things like CPQ and compensation management. Then there's revenue operations, which is workflow, right? And these things that allow us to tie together and stitch together all the things happening across the revenue process. Infrastructure, I do have a question for you on this one, John. The two areas we think about infrastructure, classically we think about it as the CRM, but we're seeing more, I dare to call them customer data platforms, but at least new data lake, whether they're data lakes, data warehouse, places where we can munch customer data. I want to get your take on that. And then what we did was we said, well, look, the third-party data actually comes from the bottom. It comes up and then it works its way all the way through to the top of the chain. So that's our way of putting a lot of different categories into these groups. So there's, we're tracking, I think, 45 categories across the revenue process. We do believe that with mergers and acquisitions, what we call sales tech, which we will call next year revenue tech mayhem, that there's a lot of things happening where consolidation will happen, but still those capabilities, there's going to be all of these amazing capabilities that we're allowed to go do that comes from the hyper automation of revenue. So John, I don't know, I threw a very specific thing at you, but I don't know if there's anything you would add to this.
No, just echo what you're seeing. Scott Brinker's MarTech slide took off starting a decade ago. It's been bonkers. It's not slowing down. And starting really 5-ish years ago out in the market, we're seeing the same thing with sales tech. I think the thought for like a piece of advice for the folks on this who are listening to this, my piece of advice would be a couple of things relative to the explosion of sales tech in parallel with the ongoing explosion of MarTech. And that is double down on cross-functional strategy. If you're probably going to waste money and or create crappy CX and or confuse the crap out of your inside organization as well as your customers and prospects. Look at all that pain I just named. If you let there be a marketing strategy and a silo from a sales strategy that then translates down into the tech layer, right? So, and I'm kind of teeing you up for your next slide, which is about revenue operations. I think the excitement of what's possible with sales tech is exciting, but it comes with a risk that I just mentioned. And so the solution to that risk, in my opinion, is cross-functional go-to-market strategy, cross-functional execution, and then I think the next slide, which is revenue operations.
Yeah, I totally agree. And actually, it's funny that you say that. You moved to my slide, but I would have moved back to your slide. You know, as you think about revenue tech, well, these things all go together, guys. Think about it in terms of the use case, right? This is really important here. You want to create your strategy to figure out, look, if you're going to be account-based next year, that's your use case. You have to determine whether you're mobilized for that, and that includes tech. Everyone says, well, you know, should I get an account-based platform? I would say, well, are you account-based? I mean, like, we got to start with your go-to-market strategy, which is the top. Then the second thing is, as John just said, look, guys, like, for us, revenue operation, there's actually a lot of names out there, for revenue operations. It's in the early stages enough that people are trying to name it and give it some scope. And for us, we're both increasing the scope and narrowing the scope. It's an ironic statement, but the truth is, we don't want people to think about it only as an organizational design. That's really important here, guys. And we don't want it to think about it as everything. Like, you know, there's another train of thought was like, well, this is how you run your business. Look, guys, this is an operating model. Okay. And what we want to do is we run the business as an interconnected end-to-end revenue process across the go-to-market functions. That's how we think about it. And that's how we should all think about it for now. Right. Because I don't care what you say, you're not doing it. Right. It's okay. It was hard. It's like, everyone's like, don't get to I mean, I understand. I don't think, you know, with the way things were, like we're in an enlightened state. We're in we have better automation, right? We have, I'd say, John, we've all evolved in the industrial B2B sales and marketing industrial complex to be able to support this. The other thing, though, is the data. The data has helped us change things, right? So we want to be able to collect data across the revenue process. And we want to make it observable, right? So that we can look at it and actually make good decisions about the business. I would argue it's still very hard to do, but that it's doable now. And we have new sources of data that make it really compelling. Example A is conversation intelligence. We actually have conversations now stored in our database. Even intent data, like third-party dark funnel data. Like, we have new data sources that allow us to get a better view of the customer and ultimately a better view of the business. So these are the things that happen. We think about it as, like I said, it's an operating model that's got a commercial coalition. So we are aligned across the commercial functions. We want to think about it in terms of an end-to-end revenue model. Okay. We want to build a stack to support it. But ultimately what happens is we build workflows so that these things all connect together and feed into a communal data source, which allows us to make great decisions on the business. And I think about that as you were talking about the demand models. It's like, guys, that's not separate from forecasting. It's not separate from how we look at these things all go together. We won't need to know. We need to follow demand as it goes all the way through the life cycle so we can truly make decisions about the business. And that's revenue operations. And I think whether you call it that or not, we see this all the time. John, people are ready to work together here to drive revenue. They're ready.
It didn't used to be that way, but like, how many years? I mean, I used to have hair when I started hearing. I used to have hair the first time I heard marketing and sales alignment, and everybody would roll their eyes and be like, what a cliche, as if that, but I can't believe it. But I had to go bald for it to happen. But marketing and sales really are being aligned more and more and more. It's a whole nother webinar why I think that happened, but I'll skip that. One other piece of advice I want to tag on to this slide, point number 5, is what should, again, we're talking to senior revenue growth executives on this call. What should they do for 2022? Right. I would recommend, remember earlier I said CMO, CRO, book a meeting. Don't wait till the middle of the year to miss your plan. That's the first piece of advice. But for this one, even if you don't change your org chart, my strong recommendation and piece of advice would be get whoever is in charge of your MarTech stack, whoever is in charge of your sales tech stack, and whoever is most in charge of things like, I don't know, forecasting, reporting, and analytics, get them in the same room in January They don't have to report to each other. They don't have to use the word revenue operations, but make sure they are saying, hey, this is the role that I play. This is the role that you play.
Yeah.
Our end-to-end rep. Just get in a room and start talking it out. And if you see people who literally are saying tomato, I don't even know what you're talking about, then you are headed for trouble, but fix it in Q1. Don't wait till Q4 to fix it. That's a piece of advice I would throw out.
Yeah, that's right. I would just add that, we've done remarkable things on the marketing side and milestone development, right? In terms of, it was really centered around the lead. But you want to extend that across the life cycle and figure out what the big milestones are that happen as someone goes from prospect to customer to lifetime customer. And then, as you sit with the operational teams, we can sign up for who can help us get that data and all agree on it. That's a huge win, guys. Yeah. It's a huge win, right? But it's funny, everyone's dictating their own models. Marketing's, like I have a waterfall, I have a sales process, I have this. That's not what we're talking about here. We want to look at everything. So I have a really quick, a couple of Gartner predicts, 75% of the highest growth companies in the world by 2025 will be incorporating a revenue ops model in their go-to-market. By 2026, Gartner predicts that 60% of organizations will fail if the only change they made was on organizational design alone. And that's what John and I are talking about. Like, let's put that aside. Let's just get the operational teams to go see if we can put the data together. And we are talking that you're RevOps there. You are. It's a win. That's all right. So let's do some SDR stuff. God, man, is it crazy? Is there anything more evergreen than talking about SDRs? Like, God,
man. This is the secret weapon. It's been the secret weapon for the last several years. But yeah. I'm interested to hear your take on how do you think the SDR BDR function evolves? What role should it play in 2022?
Yeah, well, actually, here's what I would say, guys. You may not want to know my prediction for 2026, but for 2025, 2022, look, we have an issue, which is it's harder to reach people than it even was before. Everyone talks about virtual selling. They don't realize that, or hybrid selling. The point is, the organizations you sell to went hybrid and virtual. That changed everything. So as it stood, you had 11 to 20. I think we have 11 to 20 folks in a typical buying committee. And we all know in prospecting and demand gen land, we don't know who they are. So actually, we're going after more than that in an organization. And those people are harder to reach than before. If you look at some of the data, we have like 43% of everyone says that they'd rather have digital, AKA non-rep-free experiences. They had this adversity to sort of reaching out to a rep or going to a rep and say, here's a phone book, go get leads. I think, frankly, it's been over for a long time. It's just getting worse and worse, right? When we ask sales folks, like, what's the hardest thing right now in your life? It's like 7 out of 10, 70%. That's almost all of them say reaching stakeholders. One of the things we have is we have to get to people. We're more targeted than we ever have been before, and we need this tried and true, proven process for being able to go do this. As John said, this is the secret weapon, this function, and it's more necessary than ever. When we looked at CSOs and their spending for next year, the number one budget expense next year, the number one increase in budget expense will be SDRs. So there's a lot of things, and a lot of things that the CSO CRO is investing in, but the number one is SDRs, and that's because look, we've got to get to people. We can't leave it on the salespeople, and we can't leave it on marketing. We got to all do it together, and then we need this group that's just focused on taking our targets, going through the process of engaging with them. Look, there's so many channels that we have to manage to reach these folks. Mm-hmm. And we need someone to own that. They are like these individual campaign managers, right? Then they need to get them connected. The hardest thing, get connected and actually determine fit and then get them into the hands of sales, okay? We all know that, but I just want to emphasize engage is the hardest part. Mm-hmm. And it takes a coordination of a lot of different touches. a lot of different messaging, sort of A/B tests and optimization. And now, as we become more orchestrated, they're pivotal in this new orchestrated world, and working with marketing and working with others to help lead these campaigns to go drive demand at these accounts. So, man, this is a big year for SDRs, and it's just because it's just harder and harder to reach people. It just is. And so I don't know, John, I know you've got something to tell me here, and we'll start with that, and then let's see where we go from there.
Well, at ID, we think of the SDR function, XDR, I don't ADR, BDR, I don't care, LDR. We think of the XDR function as the middleware between your marketing and demand program and your sales program. So that's the first thing, is that it's that important. A buddy of mine, who's a buddy of yours, I know, a guy named Garrett Cole, real awesome, shit hot sales consultant, sales leader, who's stood up globally successful SDR teams, said something. He has this knack for saying something really simple that you think about for a long time. He said, John, in most B2B companies, your SDR, that 26-year-old SDR, is the first human being who ever speaks to you, the prospect at your company. So what comes out of his or her mouth, rather important. So I just think it's a really critically important part of the landscape, and that's true. I think whether you're doing a one-to-many motion, a one-to-few, or a one-to-one, that middleware, that SDR function, is a game changer or a game loser, depending on how well you play it.
Yeah, I love it. So in terms of things you can do, number one is, the other thing, John, I would argue is, I've never seen in my years, by the way, I've been doing SDR stuff since 2000, from a consulting perspective. The CMO is so in tune with the SDR or XDR these days. It's incredible.
Yeah,
it's incredible. So we brought up this idea of everyone coming together, and that's a big theme here. If the XDR is middleware, then we all need to think about them and how that tie that binds comes together. If you don't have an XDR team, don't hire a sales rep and go hire two, and just start, because I've never seen it not proliferate once it starts. It never fails. So, but you just have to take the jump, and I'm telling you, the rest, you'll increase your seller hit rate, so you don't have to hire that extra head. That very expensive head. We can get two, we sometimes get 3 SDRs at that price. And if you don't want to hire and bring them in, you can outsource it. It works. It's fine. Just get going. And then we'll go from there. So it's going to be a big year in 2022 for SDRs. Now, I will just mention this, then I'm going to hand it to you. I do believe with AI that the inbound SDR and some of the other more mundane SDR tasks will go by way of automation. And don't worry, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
We need what Garrett said. We need to focus on what they say and how they message and the value they deliver. Right now, we have to also focus on tasks. And the more we can do that with the robots, the better.
Yeah.
That's it, man. I'm handing it back to you.
I thought that's what you were going to say. That's awesome. All right. So Craig did such a great job, as he always does, reminding us that marketers have been gorging themselves on technology for years. Sales is now doing the same thing. I think that's a mostly good thing, with the caveats and the risks and the warnings that I was mentioning earlier. But I want to pivot and talk about something else. It's the other end of the spectrum, because at the end of the day, all those pipes, all those platforms, all those tools, all that technology, all that data, at the end of the day, even in B2B, what we're here to do is to create human moments that influence and change human behavior. And last time I checked, none of our prospects and none of our customers actually give one shit about our tech stack. They do not care. What they care about is, what are we saying to them? Is it relevant to them? Is it compelling? And, CEB did some great research. It's old, but it's still great, which is that, yes, your B2B customers and prospects, they make decisions with their head and their heart. Right? It's emotion and ration. We know that that's the case. And so I want to talk about, and this tip number 7 is build your B2B brand into a growth driver. I have seen, it's like a cliche. I mean, I've seen so many B2B companies either underinvest in their brand in favor of tech, in favor of more content and demand gen and email nurturing streams and all that kind of stuff. Either they underinvest in brand, or when they do invest in brand, they put it out on what I call brand island. It's just this corporate narcissism, product focused, me. I'm being kind of harsh, sorry. Brand island. And so what I'm trying to suggest with 7 is turn your B2B brand into a growth driver. So how do you do that? And I am going to offer some maybe painful advice. A lot of B2B companies have what I call a shallow brand. And the way you make it into a growth driver is you go from shallow brand to deep brand. Now you're going to get a copy of this slide deck, but I want to read some of these and tell me if some of this stuff looks familiar. Corporate or product narcissism. This is a shallow brand. Pointed at your entire TAM, not targeted in any way really at all. Timid, samey, no point of view. It's like scared to take a freaking opinion about something. Boring, blends in with sea of sameness, lives in a silo, anchored in a market opportunity, meaning the brand itself it's like all they care about and all they talk about is like feeds and speeds and product shit, not human truth. Mostly about identity or logo or font or, that kind of stuff. Again, these things are important, but it can't just be about this. Here's another one. Disconnected from go-to-market strategy, disconnected from your employees and employee experience. Number 10 is the one I hate. It's like brand equals some punny, clever tagline, and then it's done. It's like, thanks for nothing. And then lastly, no real commitment to doing something that I admit is hard, which is measuring the impact of brand. So that's shallow brand. So what I'm saying is let's go to deep brand. And in every situation, it's the same 11, but it's the flip side, right? Rooted in your customers' needs, their emotions, their goals. Your brand should be a promise that your CX fulfills, right? Your brand is a check. When they take it to the bank is called customer experience, right? And I don't want to read all these to you, but by flipping that from shallow to deep brand, that is a major game changer. It becomes a force multiplier for everything else you do in your go-to-market strategy. So get out of brand island, get out of shallow brand, and move into deep brand. Now, a little bit about that. Do you want to say something, Craig?
No, I was just saying that was awesome. Keep going. I love it.
Okay. So how to think about it, and this is how we think about it at ID, right? So how do you get to deep brand? So the far left of this slide is what's your North Star? Your real purpose, your real mission, your real values. What do you believe? Why do you go to work in the morning? Why does your company exist? That's what we mean by North Star. Like cut the shit, get deep, get real, and then go to market strategy. Who are you going to win with? What are you going to say to them that they're going to care about? Why are you truly better? These are like 101 things, but these are the wells, the foundation out of which comes that deep brand. And then the last piece is, okay, you've got a deep brand defined because it's rooted in North Star and go to market. Don't let it be an island. So you got to connect it to your brand awareness, your brand preference program. Same kind of through lines into demand, into sales, into customer success. You pay it off with customer experience. And then at the end of the day, if you really want to know, and this is something we've been doing at ID, even with our own brand and value prop, is if you want to know if you have a deep brand, look at your employees. Look at your employees. Do they believe it? Do they say it? Do they reflect it? Because when you get that flywheel happening, it's game on. And if you don't believe me, you'll get the deck. There's a whole bunch of research out there that says, look, your competitors can copy your tech stack. They can copy your go-to-market motion, especially if you're selling a tech product. I know you think it's special, but it's going to get copied. But you know what they can't copy? They cannot copy a deep brand. They can't. That's one of the last remaining areas of competing. So what do you think?
Hey guys, real quick, I wanted to interrupt if I can for a second here, John. I've got a question from the audience, but finish your thought there, and we'll get to that real quick.
Well, I was just going to tee up Craig, but maybe go the question first, and then I'll throw it.
Well, the question is for Craig, John.
Look at that.
All right. It comes from Gavin. Craig, how have you changed what you look for in an SDR, and specifically around skills, personality over the last couple of decades?
Decades? Oh man, I don't know. This Gavin is just aging me. But I threw out the 2000. Yeah, well, first of all, I would say that there are different levels of XDR, like in terms of what you need from them, right? And you saw that in the go-to-market table, right? You definitely need a different type of XDR for the account-based, sort of highly personalized one-to-one stuff than you do to the batch and blast. But I would say, generally speaking, most of my customers have tilted towards what they're looking for in sales, which is the ability to write, right? Because we're hugely digital. The ability to have empathy, okay? And to understand what's happening, by the way, without even talking to a customer. That's like a trait that we have to identify. And third is like, it's not, I don't want to say smarts, but like, and the empathy goes with it, but this emotional intelligence thing, I think is just really important. But the other thing is just this aptitude. Like, can we run, I tell people all the time, can we test to see what they do with it? And they could be wrong, but let's just see if it's coherent. So it's different. And you might say, well, that sounds no, because 20 years ago, we wanted the most rabid dog we could get, because it was how fast they could move their hands across the dial. That's the evolution, and that's what we're seeing. And I hope that with automation, we can continue to go in that direction because of what Garrett said, which is we are talking about the entry into your customer experience are these people. And so that's what I would say to that. And I think we see it. We're definitely seeing it more and more. I will mention one thing on some of my very high tech customers, because everything is very product centric now. They do tests to see if that people will love and can grasp the product stuff. We actually used to forsake that. We did. We look at their personality was more important than understand. I mean, I remember 20 years ago, I was interviewing, I called my friend who was at Oracle and I said, hey, well, what do you guys do? And he said, I have no idea. He was like the number 3 rep. It's not a rip on anybody. It's just how you explained and talked about the pain and the challenges was more important, but that's not true today. And so that does require a new aptitude towards product, which is different.
Yeah, that's good. Good question.
Hey, Craig, one more question here, just as a follow-on, a bit of a follow-on, and then we'll get back to the regular scheduled program. Craig, you mentioned that there are some tools to measure the dark funnel. Do you have some examples of that you could share? This came from Dennis.
Well, I mean, it's not, the account-based platforms, have been sort of the predominant gatherers of intent data, which is like your sort of dark funnel data. And that's sort of what I've been associating with that. I don't know, actually, I would put it back to, John and team there. I mean, that for me, it's been that, like, we're still in the early stages of actually being able to do something about it, but the sort of predominant tracking source is the account-based platforms. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's what's going out there. When I hear the term dark funnel, what I understand it to mean is you're out there on web properties that I am not personally tracking. Brand is not tracking, but there are platforms and that are harvesting that data and correlating it to intent. And I think it, take it with a grain of salt would be my advice. But yeah, that's what that is.
Well, let me put it to you. That's a good point. Yeah. See, John's seen it all. Is you will see more intent coming into other products now. So I think that's going to expand. We'll see some of the big players, and we already do. You can buy the Bombora products through a variety of different vendors here. I think the key on the dark funnel is to test and understand whether intent data can work for your business. And if so, it can be a really powerful data driver.
God, I'm going to say this and I'll shut up. The other part of the dark web is what's happening in all of those conversations. that's dark too. And that's not what they mean when they say dark web, but like what are they actually saying? And so some of the sales tech that you mentioned, which is these linguistic natural language processing, tracking, and looking for how there's a whole bunch of new sales tech in there that is shining a light on that part of the dark funnel as well, which I think is super exciting. And I don't mean that in an overlord, like creepy way. I mean it in like let's shine a light on that when we're doing that. All right, because Craig, I kind of went off on shallow brand, deep brand. What do you think, man? Do you disagree? You like it? You love it? You hate it?
Well, I mean, I love it. I just for that really important thing that you mentioned is that differentiation is lost. Mm-hmm. And by the way, I see that across all product. I mean, right? I mean, I work with non-tech now all the time. The ability to create and modify and optimize products so that they are roughly the same is the reality of the game. And so you've got, and then you say, oh, well, I'm going to out execute them on go to market. Yeah, but there's a lot of information out there on what to do on the go. Like people can get pretty close here. It's a winner take all world, and brand is part of the winner take all world. And so who can, basically what people in the Silicon Valley would say is, well, who can get the most money and start to pour it in? But to get to that point and to continue to win, continue to eat other categories, that comes hand in hand with brand. And by the way, we've been seeing that for a long time. I would just say what you said, which is I think we've taken it for granted in B2B to a large extent. Yeah. Now, if you in a winner take all world, you need to win. And to do that, you'll need the brand. And then also that doesn't mean, oh, well, if I'm not number one, I got to get out. No, because like we've seen this time and time again where people carve out their brand and who they are in the midst of not being the number one, not being the latest public company with zillions of dollars, and they're still winning because they've carved out their story, right, in this crowded market. And so, I mean, I agreed with everything you just said, and I love the shallow versus deep. I think that was really important stuff. So, I'm in full agreement with everything you said here.
Well, we're recording this. I'm going to use that later. Okay, next up, we got to keep moving. Number 8 and number 9, you're both going to rip through. Hit it. Talk to us about PLG.
I'm just going to go quickly. There's a tech perspective here, which I'm showing on the screen, right? Which is, basically in tech, you're just not going to see many folks come out with a non-product led product. I mean, if you look at the capital markets, like OpenView Ventures is tracking the product led growth companies on the public markets. Like they are the most valuable companies in the indexes, right? 30% growth rate, 18 times revenue multiples. That's probably higher now. Last time I checked this, which was like months ago. So look, I mean, it's this really simple idea, which is, in this world of the differentiation's tough. It's information is just, they're inundated with information. What if a buyer could confirm a product's value before they gave you money? It's that simple. And it doesn't have to be in a trial. This is a trial. This is a free trial sort of idea, right? The PQL is this new idea of a product qualified lead where people enter into trials, and based on their fit and then what they're doing in the trial, it unearths a score that allows an organization to know, hey, these guys look like they're qualified to go either engage with the sales rep and close them or effectuate the transaction digitally. Either way, it's a very trial-centric point of view. I just had this argument with Dave Brock, who's another sales consultant, and we're just talking about it. I said, well, look, like product-led is actually, we think about it in terms of the trials, but we shouldn't. We should just realize that this is another area where the customer has to feel really comfortable with what they're buying. A product-led sales scenario can happen halfway through the sales cycle. I mean, we see more and more organizations leaning towards POCs or free trial, like late-stage trials, managed trials, where you do it. This is just the reality of the game, and product's going to have to be part of what you do. Now, people ask me, well, what if we're not software? Well, what if you're not? I talked to this company that sold cameras for security. You know what they did? They gave you your first camera. And people said, oh, how much is it? I like it. And it's not. It's yours. It's free, right? You know why? Because they knew the camera was awesome. And so everyone starts using it. Another example is I went to a conference and they had a hologram of a submarine. They were trying to sell a submarine. You need to feel it and touch it. You can't build it. So can we do a prototype? Everything, this is about, product-led's about, the product being like one of the key differentiators in whether someone buys and whether they grow or not. And so that's really, I don't want people to get pigeonholed here. It's obvious. We're all product-led. We'd all rather feel much more comfortable. Okay, so that's my big pedestal thing. The reality is for many folks, this is a new process, especially the free trial one. It's another one of your go-to-markets. If you took John's grid, it might replace a little bit of maybe a volume, a one to TAM, but it's just another go-to-market strategy in here. For many young companies, it's all of it, but as you grow, it's a percentage of it. And what you want to think about here is, number one, as customers come in and try the product, what are those key milestone moments that tell us that they're going to be someone worth working on and potentially have workflows that allow sales to get involved? If we don't think sales should be involved, then we need workflows for marketing to push them through the process. And this is new, right? We're seeing a whole tech stack emerge of automation for identifying PQLs, and so that's real. That will be 2022 without a doubt.
Yeah, man, that's a great overview. The only thing I would add is OpenView partners, they really are the thought leader on this. They have been pushing it the whole time. So for 2022, if you're not already knowledgeable about PLG as a go-to-market strategy and the deep way that Craig was just talking about, go get on OpenView's newsletter. I mean, seriously, it's worth it. I get it. I've been getting it for years. It's awesome. And then the second thing is just start thinking along the lines of what Craig said. That's my piece of advice, is just start thinking about how you can bring your product experience up funnel, up journey. That's almost how I think about that. But great overview, Craig. I appreciate that. All right, let's go to the next one. Tip number 9: be aware of these CX insights and trends for 2022. This is a huge practice at Gartner and was it Topo as well. I've heard you speak about this, but what would you offer for 2022?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, guys, I did a pivot here because I was going to deliver the insights and trends, and then I just wanted everyone to know that the Gartner folks, as you said, it's a huge thing at Gartner. They just created this thing called Core, which aggregated a lot of different engagement models into this one piece, which looked at all the different things that happening in buying process. We've seen this before. I do love how they incorporated things like the struggle and the crisis and these things. And then we have a lot of the concepts we've been talking about throughout this conversation today. Intelligent coordination, orchestration. Like, what are those points of interaction, right? And how are we going to deliver that? And how are we going to coordinate that? What are the workflows that can deliver that? How do we use data and analytics to better serve our customers? These are the things that, I really enjoyed kind of what was happening here on this one. That's why I included it. So I have a couple of things. So one is, not surprisingly, we believe by 2025, 80% of B2B interactions will be digital. That will put more emphasis on the CX, but more importantly, guys, we can track it. That's the thing everyone needs to know, is like, everyone's like, what's changed? Well, as we move digital, we actually are in a way better. As John was saying, it's like conversations. That's dark, man. Like, we don't know what's going on, but when it's digital, we do know. And so that actually is a good thing for everyone. Okay. The other thing I thought was really interesting, we asked organizations like if to rank if they could buy technology solutions for particular use cases. The number one was, and 65% of them said they would look at or buy solutions that help them create and deliver a better customer experience. So you're seeing the investment here. I would argue that CX has been the conversation the whole time in this whole presentation. We're talking about an end-to-end experience that we deliver to customers. And like I said, as it becomes more digital, it actually becomes more easier to deliver and optimize. Last thing I'll mention, the big one that I'm seeing at Gartner that I'm really excited about is total experience, which is thinking about how all the experiences that you have to deliver can intertwine. The two that come to my mind are CX with employee experience, which we're going to talk about later, but how these things come together. And I'll just give you an example. I remember I was talking to an agency that's working with a big airline. They came in and spent a year and a half doing big digital CX transformation, right? the CEO is telling me the story. He's like, then we went through and we said, well, what is really the CX? And he said, oh my God, we missed something. The number one interaction point that every single customer does and judges us on is the interaction with the airline stewardess, I'm not sure what we call them that, but the stewardesses, right? Stewards. And that is, and they were unhappy. They were not enabled. They were not they couldn't figure out who the customers were and what they bought. That's the perfect example of total experience and all the things that intertwine. What happens with the customer, what happens to the employees, what happens with our partners, what happens with all the folks that come together, and how can we bring those things together? Those things all equal CX. They all affect our brand that John was talking about, right? And that's all part of the future of how we think about our company.
There's such a theme weaving through all of these, and it's this end-to-endness that we're talking about. It's this integration, like capital I integration, not just system integration, but thinking holistically, whether it's go-to-market, whether it's your tech stack or revenue operations, certainly whether it's CX, whether it's brand. Good stuff. Also, I just want to point out, this is a holiday fireside chat, and I just realized that this slide looks like a snow globe. Boom. Okay. No I'm going to take this one 10. I'm going to go quick. This is not overly complicated, but we are seeing and I'd love to hear your take on this when I'm done blabbing here, but from our point of view in the market, we're seeing a major increase in the number of companies who are realizing we got to start leveraging partner, indirect channel way more. And that's not just SaaS companies, by the way. We're talking about lots of different companies and lots of different verticals. So the piece of advice for 2022 is I want you to look at this continuum. On the far left, it's like an assessment. It's like what I want you to do is I want you to assess where your company is today on this, what I'm calling kind of partner or channel continuum, maturity model kind of thing. Where is it today, and where do you think it needs to be just to hit its ongoing year-over-year growth goals? And then once you kind of assess current state and where you think it ought to be, the next piece is, you know what you do. You have to start figuring out what's the next right steps, fight it out in terms of budget and priority and staffing and all that good stuff. But it starts by being clear about, and at the far left, it's asking the question, does this company, where I'm a growth leader, is a channel or partner program a really good fit for our go-to-market strategy? If it's not, you're done. Stay in the far left. But if it is, where are you from a maturity standpoint? Don't pretend that you're all the way on the far right when you're not. That's the other thing I see, is I see a lot of partner, and it's like completely nascent. It's totally immature. They are a good fit for it, but it's not together yet. It's not producing. It's not strategic. It's not integrated. So don't pretend that, so 2 pieces of advice. Use this kind of framework to quickly get a sense of where does your company fit relative to partner and channel. And then the second piece of advice is don't fake. Don't fake. Just get real about it, and then go to the next step of maturity. Craig, what are you seeing? What I'm seeing, which is the proliferation of indirect and partner?
Well, you have 2 things, right? You have the folks with a mature partner channel, and they are looking to hyper automate that and make it more scaled. They've all tried things over the years, but it's been hard, right? So you will see that same idea of that's part of our end to end. We need to work with them to figure out that sort of technology platform that allows us to not just scale it, but to track it and to help improve engagement, drive demand, et cetera. Yeah, look, on the channel, I think for a lot of companies, particularly, I don't know, it's either new or they've tried it didn't work, but in my opinion, you need, in this world, you need every channel that could potentially drive a customer. Right. And the partner channel is it's a beautifully scaled one when you nail it. When you nail it, it's extraordinary, the scale that comes with it. So I would say, I agree. I would actually say that across the board, the partner channel programs are either being optimized or built from scratch today, but everyone's sort of looking at that because everyone's looking at the various go-to-markets that they have to support.
Right. Good. Okay. I know we're coming up on time. This last one, I think, and I'm not just saying this is the most important one. Double down on people and your culture. You've got some things to say. I've got a few things as well. You go first.
Well, no, I'll just cue you up. I love this slide. There's like there was so much negativity over the last couple of years that I do think we've made advances in the human deal as a result. And like the great resignation is forcing the human deal, or the great reshuffle, whatever you want to call it. It's only better for employees, which will only make our companies better. And the human deal is like this idea of like, how do we take this person, Alex, right, and think about the things that make their work life better and fun, and make them want to be a part of our organization. And I think we all get it and we understand it. I think we are at an interesting point in sales, right? There's a lot of folks leaving and going to new jobs in sales. Marketing, the inflation of marketing salaries has led to a lot of people leaving. And so can you take a step back and think about the human deal, and not just think about it in terms of money, but what is it that we are providing our employees, I think is a theme we can all get behind.
Yeah. I'm the CEO of a company, a fast growing company. And I really, this topic this has been well over half of my entire job for the last 2 years has been this. And I've really been trying to be a student of what are the best leaders doing relative to their people and their culture. And I've sort of identified 5 things. I'm going to go quick. And these are things that I'm trying to do. And I guess the tip is check this out, consider it. Maybe if you like one of these, bring them into your own leadership style. But one is perspective and gratitude, right? Think about what we have all been through in the last 2 years. It's crazy. It's crazy. Now, think about how your team has performed over the last 2 years. If they're anything like my team, and I bet they are, they have been acting like professionals. They have been doing a great job showing up, solving problems. So remember to have that perspective as a leader. Remember to share that perspective with your team, and don't be stingy with gratitude. Number 2, connection to purpose. As leaders, it's our job to make the people in our organizations understand that their jobs have meaning. It's not just a job. It's not just MQLs or whatever the hell. It's way deeper than that. And don't leave that to chance. You have to connect the dots with them from their passions and superpowers all the way up to your North Star and all the way back down. So connection to purpose. Don't leave that to chance. Number 3, connection to clarity. Everything has changed. Everything is allegedly a number 1 priority. That will burn your people out and they will leave you. So give your people the benefit of prioritization. Remind them what their most essential job duties are. Let them know that you don't expect them to be perfect. You don't expect them to do everything by end of day Monday, because they're not going to do it, and you know that. So you give them clarity. Make their job, make it easier for them to be great. Number 4, cultural change. I don't know about you, but the last 2 years, especially as a white guy in the United States, has revealed that a whole lot of the old way of doing stuff was not right. It was not good enough. And so my challenge to myself and to you is lead cultural change. Don't wait for your head of HR to do it. So if you see something about social justice or climate or work from home or culture or values, certainly bring it up in the leadership team meeting. But you know what? Be a rabble rouser. Change it. Change it in your team and make your company figure it out by your example. And the last one, number 5, is you, the senior leader. Change is a long game. It's not a short game. Transformation takes time, which means senior leaders like us, we can't quit. So you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself. I'm talking about sleep. I'm talking about eating. I'm talking about mental health. And there's 2 reasons why you need, 3. Number 1, think about your partner who puts up with you at home. Number 1, and your kids. That's the first reason to do it. Second reason to do it is for you. Because we can't have you break. You're too important. And then the third reason is, no matter what we say, no matter what we put on our PowerPoints, you guys, our people follow our example. So if you want them to be healthy, you got to be healthy. So I don't know. Those are the 5 things that I'm trying to apply as a leader. And I guess I'll just hand it back to you, Mike. I know we went over a little bit, but we did better than I thought we would do.
Yeah, no problem, guys. Great job. Thank you so much to both of you for kind of digging into a really spirited conversation, really valuable topics that we covered today. On this slide, as we dive into Q&A, and we're going to go ahead and answer one question. I'm going to pull one out of the hat here, just so we've got one more. But as you can see here, we've summarized today's discussion topics, so you can refer back to them after today. And before we get to that question, if any of you have any lingering questions, thoughts, or comments that you might want to share after today's event, including just talking shop, please reach out. We're always thinking and talking about this stuff every day at ID. We'd be happy to show you how we're addressing some of this for our clients. And as a reminder, we'll share the recording of today's event soon. So, John and Craig, just one question I'm pulling out of the hat here, just so we can get one, try to fulfill our psychological contract. Speaking of organizational structures, do you have a recommendation on where SDR or BDR teams should sit? I have seen them on both marketing and sales teams. And do you have any thoughts on either pulling SDRs into the marketing function, leaving them with sales?
That's great. This question never dies. I'll give you a practitioner's point of view, and then Craig will give you probably an accurate answer. My 2 cents is the answer to that question: where do SDR, BDR best live in your organization? The first most important one is they should report into someone who's going to pay attention to them and understand how critical a role they play in your go-to-market success. I don't give a shit if it's sales or marketing. Ultimately, I care that they're getting the care, the leadership, the feeding, the support that they need, and the integration that they need. So if they're going to report to someone who's over there on the side and they're just going to take them for granted or not give them what they need, then that's the wrong person. I don't care what their title is. That's my 2 cents. But Craig, what do you think?
I agree. It's the human deal. Sorry, that was terrible. But it doesn't matter where honestly, it doesn't matter. It only matters in the sense that they have to have leadership. They can't be left out there and given a phone book and told to go get leads. You need someone that's going to support them. Both sides have done a good job of creating workflow. I've not seen a day like marketing makes sense, right? Especially with the amount of coordinated orchestration that's happening today. Sales makes sense because of the amount of coordinated, integration. It's about who's leading them and whether they're going to provide the attention and resources they need to be successful. Look, we haven't done it at Gartner, but years ago at Topo, we did this. We looked at the folks that reported into marketing, reported into sales, and we looked at the performance, and it was the same. There was no different. It was about the people, and so I agree with you. I just added more words so we could prolong this webinar, but yeah, I agree.
No, I didn't know about that research. That's actually pretty cool.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Well, look, I know we're over time. I know, Mike, you're going to wrap it up for us, but I also while I still have a little bit of daylight left, Craig, I really do think the world of you. You're someone I look up to in this industry of ours of revenue growth. You're a real thought leader. I'm not trying to make you blush, but I just want to tell you how much I've enjoyed today, and just you're a blast to work with. Thanks again for doing this.
Of course, and feelings are mutual. This is one of my last webinars for a while, and so I couldn't think of a better guy to spend it with. So I appreciate it, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, if I can interrupt the love fest here for just a second, thanks certainly go to John and Craig. It was a great session. You guys brought the energy today, the passion. It's clear why you guys are both so adept at advising your clients and your customers. So everybody knows we'll be doing another series of events in 2022 that may or may not include Craig, but certainly an upcoming CEO panel that you're not going to want to miss in January, where John will reprise his role as CEO and founder of ID. And we'll have leaders also from Sendoso and Terminus taking part in that. And we'll have more to say about that one after the holidays. So keep an eye on your inboxes and social media. In the meantime, all I have to say in conclusion is thank you. Thanks for the great questions throughout. And please, everyone, celebrate this holiday season safely. We're looking forward to a great 22. And from all of us at ID, take care and happy holidays.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys.